Hey folks, Changing Reason here. Today I want to share some brief thoughts regarding the presidential race. But first, some background. I'm 40 years old, and up until a year or so ago, I was quite convinced that who the American people put into the White House mattered to some degree or another. I believed the course of the nation could be steered, or at least guided, by whomever we elected every 4 years. I voted to re-elect Bill Clinton in 1996. I voted for Al Gore in 2000. I spit and frothed at the mouth over what happened in Florida, truly convinced at the time we had witnessed some sort of coup d'etat. I spent 4 years hating George W. Bush, voted for John Kerry, and then spent 4 more years hating George W. Bush. I voted for Barack Obama in 2008, genuinely believing that his election was the beginning of a new and better time. I voted for Barack Obama again in 2012, with far less enthusiasm than in 2008, but I believed he was still a demonstrably better choice than Mitt Romney. Now, I had been convinced for some time that 9/11 was an inside job, but I don't think I had really processed the implications of what that meant. I watched any number of documentaries on the topic, broiled myself with outrage, and then went about my business. It's almost as if 9/11 became something detached from my day-to-day life, something that I'd return to now and again when the mood struck me. I knew there was a, quote, truth movement out there fighting the good fight. I wish them the best, and that's about it. Then, going on a year ago, I was watching a video by YouTuber Crow777. I had somehow stumbled upon his lunar wave videos. I didn't know what to make of them, and frankly still don't, but found them fascinating just the same. Anyway, in this particular video, he concluded with a chant about nobody dying at Sandy Hook. Nobody died at Sandy Hook? What did that mean? I had never heard of this, and it sounded absolutely batshit. But I felt compelled to look into it. I searched the topic on YouTube and found an avalanche of videos. A hoax? A goddamned hoax? Yeah, it was. The evidence was there, clear as day, for anyone willing to see it. This led me to videos discussing the Boston bombing, the Aurora Theater shooting, and others. Then the Paris attack happened, then San Bernardino. I was now seeing the world with new eyes. I posted my first real video on the topic of the Brussels airport attack, and the rest is history with respect to my YouTube presence. Anyway, I'm taking the time to provide this background because I believe it's important for my audience to have an idea of where I'm coming from. Okay, so I could somehow accept that George W. Bush had his hands in 9/11. He and everyone around him were already villains in my book. But Obama? How could he preside over an onslaught of hoaxed events and not also be a villain? 2 consecutive presidents, each participating in the mass deception of the American public, each from opposing political parties. I knew now this couldn't be happenstance, or a new development. I had to re-examine all of my previous beliefs and suppositions. In my lifetime, had anything of any real significance actually changed from one presidential administration to the next? I think the honest answer is no. The same people are getting richer, the same people are getting poorer, the same sorts of wars are being conducted for all the same sorts of reasons. The same boogeymen haunt us, the same debts bury us, the same problems continue, perpetually unsolved. I had convinced myself at one point that Obamacare was one point of light, until I allowed myself to see it for what it really is. Yet another mechanism for funneling billions of dollars away from middle and lower class families into the coffers of the powerful. In this case, those of the insurance companies and other elements of the healthcare industrial complex. Nothing changes, at least not anything of substance, and rarely, if ever, for the better. Conditions, in the Western world at least, are permitted to remain just tolerable enough that we continue buying things and remain somewhat docile. Like everything else on the planet, we are a resource to be harvested. Whatever wealth we can manage to squeeze out is continuously stripped from us via ever-increasing prices of the goods and services we need every day. Staggering medical expenses, legalized usury, and manufactured economic collapses that seem to occur when someone somewhere determines that the upward transfer of wealth isn't happening quite fast enough. Each of us is little more than an individual dispenser of tiny nuggets of wealth, gleefully consumed by the millions, by the powerful few who've managed to rig the system to their overwhelming advantage. In exchange, we are fueled with fantasies and platitudes, and lubricated with fear and hate, directed in all the wrong directions. These powerful few, however you wish to refer to them, the Illuminati, the New World Order, the globalists, the elite, the super rich, whatever, are the ones running the show, worldwide. Put simply, they like having all the stuff and have no intention of giving it back. Ever. If we understand this basic fact, our world makes a whole lot more sense. Very little changes because the folks in charge aren't interested in change. Things are running very nicely in their favor, thank you very much. Do we actually believe these people, who literally have everything to lose, would hinge their plans on the whims of fickle voters, leave their destinies in the hands of the peasants? Of course not. If you were one of them, would you? Our elections are theater. The presidential race in particular is among the more superbly crafted American fictions. A grand drama of epic scale in which we immerse ourselves every 4 years, convinced to our cores that if we can just get our candidate elected, everything will be okay. But things are never really okay, are they? Beyond a few minor details, the same things are accomplished, and the same things fail to be accomplished, regardless of who wins the office. And it should already be clear by now to anyone with eyes that the U.S. Congress has long since been compromised, fully bought and paid for by the moneyed interests. When it comes to rigging the game in America for and by the elite, our legislative branch is where the rubber hits the road. But what about the president? Constitutionally speaking, we know the president doesn't have a whole lot of power anyway. The president is not a king. But that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about who the president truly serves and answers to. I'm arguing that the president governs at the strict behest of the very same elite whom our representatives and senators have been serving for generations. Whoever sits in the Oval Office is little more than a placeholder, a stooge, regardless of party. This fact seems very clear. Rather than thinking of our president as any sort of leader with any sort of independent authority, the president should be compared to something more akin to the host of an award show, like the Emmys or the Oscars. While the host can set the tone and pace of the show, direct our attention to one category or another, emphasize certain winners or losers, or even insert a little social commentary here and there, he or she does not have any real control with respect to the overall format, the overall rules. The host doesn't pick the time slot, doesn't select the live performances, doesn't pick the categories to be recognized, doesn't pick the winners, etc. In fact, the host doesn't make a single solitary decision that has any real bearing on the fundamental nature of the event itself. He or she is just a face, a personality, to keep things moving along, to make an otherwise intolerable affair, a room full of rich people giving each other prizes, into something entertaining, worthwhile, and important to the rest of us. So when we claw each other's eyes out over whether Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump would be a better president, we're basically fighting over whether Jimmy Kimmel or Neil Patrick Harris should host the Emmy Awards next year. Now, having said all that, discussing the merits of this or that candidate seems rather pointless. Because it is. Nonetheless, I want to spend a little time on Donald Trump, if for no other reason than a staggering number of people have somehow convinced themselves he's going to save us. I'm not going to waste anyone's time discussing Hillary Clinton. I fully acknowledge she's a terrible human being. However, whether she's substantially more terrible than any of her predecessors is debatable, but also not very important in the grand scheme of things. I'm also not going to discuss Hillary Clinton because the truth community has been beating this topic to death. Is she sick? Why did she fall down? Is she already dead? Does she have a body double? What's in those emails? What did she lie about today? And on and on. But these same people seem unwilling to confront the fact that Donald Trump is just another part of the same charade. If anything, his nomination demonstrates that said charade has entered a new phase. No one's even trying anymore to hide the fact that the presidential race is for entertainment purposes only. For decades now, Donald Trump has been, above all else, an entertainer, an on-screen personality, a Hollywood celebrity. He's a performer, through and through.
Sir, it is my esteemed pleasure to introduce Mr. and Mrs. Donald Trump. It's the Donald! Oh my God!
Samantha, a cosmopolitan, and Donald Trump. You just don't get more New York than that.
Wade,
Trump?
I hear Kelson finally dumped you.
Not exactly, no. We just came to a mutual understanding that she couldn't bear me for another second.
Mike?
Sir?
Randall?
Donald.
Mr. Trump here wrote The Art of the Deal. Then he wrote a new bestseller, The Art of the Comeback.
2 books.
Wow.
How are you just going to crash and burn and take his clients with him? Excuse me. Dalton, I'm here with Donald Trump. For God's sake, how long is it going to be?
I have checks sitting on 2 tables. Ah, Miss Ayers, how nice to see you. I have Mr. Cuddy's usual table.
Cuddy?
Sorry, Frank, but I'm gonna go crash and burn with Cuddy. Call me.
The Donald is here, live on Monday Night Raw. Hey, look at this! Donald Trump! Donald Trump! Donald Trump taking down Vince McMahon! Oh, my God! The hostile takeover of Donald Trump on Vince McMahon has happened at WrestleMania 23. I didn't think he would do it.
The predictable objection at this point is, then why is the mainstream media so clearly against him? Well, maybe for the same reason the media would have us believe Sandy Hook was real, or that ISIS is coming to get us. It's a part of the show, part of the script, as I suspect were Trump's high-profile contract terminations in the summer of 2015 with retail behemoth Macy's Inc. and broadcast giant NBC Universal, 2 companies with a long history together. And speaking of NBC Universal, the recently released recording of Trump's sexually vulgar 2005 conversation with Access Hollywood's Billy Bush appears to be another element of this script. Look, Donald Trump was working for NBC at the time as host of The Apprentice. Access Hollywood is an NBC property. and it's not as if this footage fell between the cushions of the couch before anyone could review it. In other words, the claim that no one at NBC, and by extension NBC News, was aware of the existence of this footage before last week is not credible. Even less plausible, we are to believe that the Washington Post managed to scoop this story ahead of NBC, the source of the footage, because NBC News was just too slow out of the gates. Taken together, this all feels a bit too convoluted. As an aside, I'll remind everyone that Billy Bush was the first TV personality to interview Olympic swimmer Ryan Lochte, after Lochte claimed to have been robbed at gunpoint in Rio this past August. Not only did Lochte's story turn out to be a complete fabrication, I can't help but suspect that the whole episode was perhaps a horribly fumbled media hoax. Considering Bush was scheduled to begin his new position on NBC's Today Show exactly 1 week after his interview with Lochte, and Ryan Lochte was slotted to be a contestant on the upcoming season of ABC's Dancing with the Stars, it's not too much of a stretch, I think, to imagine that some funny business was going on there. And just the fact alone that Billy Bush, of all people, is directly associated now with 2 separate major national news stories inside of 60 days should be seriously tickling some bullshit detectors. I dare say that just about every single person watching this video believes the mainstream media is a tool of the elite, an integral part of the ongoing mass deception perpetrated against the people. The press lies to us all the time, every day. Yet, somehow it hasn't occurred to huge segments of the truth community that maybe the media's marching orders were to line up against Trump. Mind you, this was done after the very same media spent the previous year covering Trump endlessly, to the clear detriment of his Republican opponents. The media lie about hoaxed shootings and terrorist attacks and just about everything else under the sun. But when the media tell us they're against Donald Trump, that's when we take them at their word. Come on. Get serious. Trump didn't achieve this level of popularity and secure the Republican nomination despite the media. He achieved it because of the media. If the media, or more accurately, those who own the media, had wanted America to ignore Donald Trump, they simply would not have given him the time of day, and his presidential bid would have evaporated overnight. Make no mistake, Trump is precisely where he is supposed to be, dutifully performing whatever role he has been assigned. And you're fooling yourself if you think Trump is too wealthy to be beholden to anyone. He's got some money, sure, but he isn't even close to entering the ranks of the super rich running the show. But I bet he'd sure like to be. How this is not obvious to everyone, particularly those within the truth community, is difficult to grasp. Perhaps we're so understandably broken, jaded, and disoriented, so starved for a savior that a cartoon character like Donald Trump, under just the right light, can seem to fill that role. I sympathize, I really do. But we have to come to terms with reality. We're being sold a bill of goods, and the same one over and over. Again, it's not merely that one candidate or the other is a fraud. The whole process is fraudulent, from soup to nuts. Certainly, you can have fun trying to pick a winner. You can root for one candidate and demonize the other. Put a sign in your yard and a sticker on your bumper. You can even go out and vote if you want, and brag to Facebook that you did your civic duty. But it might as well be a race between Cruella de Vil and SpongeBob SquarePants, for all the difference it'll make. You won't find any change or saviors here. America, you've been had.